the $127,000, but Inland Seas did, and we're going to do wonderful things with it. So thank you. I appreciate having this opportunity. I am a little puzzled as to how I got this opportunity, actually. I will offer that disclaimer at the beginning. I really don't believe I'm any more qualified than any of you out here to tell my story, but because I don't really have a secret ingredient or a series of steps that you might want to follow in order to find fulfillment. I simply have, a story, things in my life that have stood out that have brought me to the point I'm at today. So that's what I'm going to share, the story. And I can tell you that story for me started in elementary school. I was the kind of student that oftentimes was a pain for teachers. I always asked the why questions. I needed a purpose for spending my time and energy on something, and I just didn't see the purpose in labeling the parts of a sentence, things along those lines. And math was relatively easy for me, but I didn't like simply following a series of steps to have this number appear seemingly like magic. I wanted to know why doing those things generated that number. And unfortunately, when I would ask those why questions to my teachers, I would get the typical responses you probably all have heard over the years. It's because I told you so, or because it's going to be in the test, or something along those lines. And as a result, I can tell you I did not like school. In fact, I would go as far as to say I hated school. And I vividly remember my last day of high school. I can see the exact spot in the hallway, my friend Eric standing on my left side, and me proudly proclaiming that I will never step foot into school again. I thought, all you needed at that time was a paycheck. I was like any other 18-year-old, like fancy cars, eating out, partying with my friends, and those were the days where you could find a job that provided those things just straight out of high school. And truth is, I found a pretty unique job. I worked for a company that serviced bank equipment. You see D-Bowl on just about anything in banks. That was a company I worked for. I did fun things like break into safe deposit boxes for people that lost their keys. I was that guy that they would call when those pneumatic tubes in bank drive-through places would get stuck because somebody put like 10 rolls of quarters in them or didn't close the lid or something along those lines. It was an interesting job and provided enough money for me to enjoy the basic pleasures in life. But it only took me a couple of years to begin to ask those why questions that I think we all do. Why am I doing this? How did I end up here? What's my life going to be like, 30 years from now? And the reality is I didn't really like the answers to those questions, and I didn't really like the future I saw for myself doing that. So this was kind of the first time in my life I remember having an awareness that my work life should have a greater meaning than simply that paycheck. I had an overwhelming feeling that I needed a purpose in my work, that I wanted to make a difference in somehow, but because I didn't like school, I didn't really have a path. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'll tell you that my greatest consistent joy in life has always been on or near water. My best and really only memories of young childhood involved going for rides in my grandpa's rowboat, or going out on my dad's boat, or riding my bike down to the river. Water has always had that strong kind of gravitational pull for me when I'm trying to find answers in life. So as a young boy, those cement-lined shores of the Detroit River answered a lot of questions for me. And during this period of life, when I was searching for that purpose, I spent a lot of time on the shores of Lake Michigan. After several months and many trips to the beaches of South Haven, I was living in Kalamazoo at that time, this desire to find a purpose was so strong, I decided at that time, I was 21, that my biggest mistake up to that point in life was that silly vow never to step foot in school again. So it was there that I decided to quit my job, move to Traverse City to go to NMC. My oldest sister had gone to NMC years before that, and she introduced me to the dunes and to Glen Arbor and all the beaches and everything in this region. And I'd come up a couple times to ski at Sugarloaf a couple of years before that, and I just couldn't fathom a better place than Traverse City. So I got lucky. Things started to click for me pretty quickly. I found what I considered the best job in the world for an aimless 21-year-old. I was hired as a deckhand aboard the first tall ship in Traverse City. That was the schooner Malabar back in those days. Most people remember that. This job provided me with the opportunity to be on the water every day. My bedroom was aboard this cool boat. My meals were all provided for me aboard this ship, and I even made a little money. I found that one of my favorite things working on a Malabar was the part of the season that we served as the school ship. Back in those days, Inland Seas Education Association leased the schooner Malabars. They were just getting started with this unique thing. For those of you that aren't familiar, Inland Seas utilizes several of the tall ships that are sailing in our region today and have been since that time to create kind of the coolest classroom you can think of. Schools from all around the state bring their classes aboard these ships, and students are placed in the role of a Great Lakes scientist. They get to use a bunch of really cool science equipment. They get up close and personal with all parts of the lake ecosystem. We usually have about 5,000 participants a year that do this, and to date, over 120,000 participants have gained an understanding and appreciation of our Great Lakes with Inland Seas aboard these awe-inspiring ships. Casey, you're on the right track. The goals of Inland Seas programs have always been, as they are today, to inspire students to care about our Great Lakes and to inspire these students to consider careers in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. It's our belief that we can help to provide the supply of individuals that are going to be available to solve the issues our lakes are going to face in the future. So what I noticed then was that Inland Seas was giving students a purpose. They were helping students understand why they should learn something, and I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it because I saw kids excited about learning. I saw students engaged, active, having fun, and I thought to myself, why in the world wasn't school like that for me? So that fall, I went to NMC, and now that I had a little purpose and direction, I found I loved it. It was great going to school. I loved learning, and this is kind of where another, I think, big memory stands out for me. I'm thinking about a really nice summer day, hanging out by myself, enjoying the blue sky, water at Pyramid Point, and thinking good things. I love Traverse City. I was enjoying school. I had a fun job. Found the love of my life. What would have happened, I thought, if I didn't jump off that cliff and decided to move and start over again? And that line of thinking got me thinking, like, how many people in this world are in that same boat? How many people didn't like school? How many people ended up on the wrong track in life? And I couldn't help but think that was pretty unfortunate. It was that line of thinking that helped me realize that purpose I'd been looking for. I discovered how I would make a difference. I decided to be a teacher. As a teacher, I thought I would surely be able to make my students understand why they were doing something. I could make learning fun, engaging, inspirational. I would dedicate education to helping students to enjoy school so they didn't end up hating it like me. So I became an elementary school teacher primarily because I knew that typically when students state they had a negative educational experience, that was by third grade, and that would certainly be an inaccurate representation of my experience. So in that career, I had the opportunity to teach in all grades 1 through 5, and I think I was pretty good at it. I felt confident that I was making a difference, and that felt great. Now, I have a pretty good story that explains my next transition, but I don't have the time for that. So I'm just going to kind of suffice to say that I enjoyed making a difference so much that I decided that I could make even a bigger difference by becoming an elementary school principal. And as a principal, I can assure you that I was full of purpose. I believe I was making a huge difference, and as a result, I never really questioned my direction. I mean, I was an educator. I was a principal in Boyne City for 13 years, and to be honest, over those last couple of years, I had been mapping out my final 10 years. I had certification to become a superintendent. I believed I was going to make that move in a couple of years, and I just kind of figured I was on that track we're all familiar with: teacher, principal, superintendent. And so just when I was thinking I had this all figured out, I learned that Inland Seas Education Association that same place that played such a large role in my life was looking for an executive director to replace their founder, Tom Kelly. So, part of this searching, I had a bachelor's degree in elementary education, a master's degree in educational administration, and this certification for superintendency. I always kind of thought I was pigeonholed into that traditional educational arena. So this was the first time that I'd seen a position or heard of something that I thought, geez, that training and background would actually be good for something outside of the traditional educational arena. But, the thought seemed pretty crazy to me. I had a good thing in Boyne City. I was well liked. I had, the good educator insurance, retirement benefits, and was making a decent salary. And, I knew that would be tough to match at a nonprofit. But really, most importantly, I had a family. I had 2 sons, a wife. My kids were in high school at that time. And I thought, how in the world, could you move 2 boys out of the only school they've ever known? Our life was pretty well taken care of. Why mess with that? So while those were all rational thoughts, there were things that challenged my thinking, though. Things like having the chance to take over the helm of an organization that gave me my purpose. Having the chance to move my kids to the community that I loved and started our family. With a job like in Seas, I would still have the opportunity to have the educational impact I wanted. And maybe I could even hope that I would play a role in impacting someone's direction in life the way I was impacted by UNC's 20 years prior to that. And I had the opportunity to play a role in protecting the lakes that have always been so important to me. Overall, I'd say I had the overall feeling that this was an opportunity to bring my life full circle, and I just couldn't shake the thought that people don't get that chance more than once. So, obviously, I took that leap. It was a difficult, stressful decision. It wasn't something that was easy. But I can tell you now, 4.5 years later, I'm certainly happier than I was as a principal. It was the right decision. My kids, the fear I had there was completely irrelevant. They fell in love with their new high school, this community, and they quickly realized that this was a really good move for them. So I feel a real strong purpose in this job. I'm confident I'm making a difference in the lives of kids with the lakes I love so much, and for an organization that I want to make sure keeps doing this important work long into the future. But I do have one very important point I think I should make. I didn't know what to think when I was asked to present at a fulfillment kind of thing. Like, I worry sometimes that, I would be convincing everybody to jump off a cliff. I want you to know that I don't wake up, every morning excited about going to work. I enjoy my job, but, I don't have that feeling that you hear so many times that, you love to work so much that you don't ever feel like you're going to work anymore. I fear that some of you might not like parts of your job, or that you feel work is too stressful, or you don't like your boss or your colleagues, or you simply feel burned out and think the grass is going to be greener somewhere else. I don't want to stand here and tell you that I don't experience those same feelings. This job, just like being a teacher or being a principal, is difficult. It's stressful, and there are plenty of times when it's not really all that much fun. So, again, I would just feel terrible if I encourage anyone to jump off a cliff under that false pretense that everything will be perfect afterwards. That's not my story, really. But I challenge you to think of fulfillment not as an easy job where your world is full of sunshine and roses, but instead think of fulfillment as a job doing the difficult work of making a difference in this world. This world needs your help, for sure. Just remember that when looking for fulfillment in this type of work, the focus needs to be outside of yourself. And I can attest that's not always easy to do. Thank you.